Trenvar was a quiet village. It sat nestled in a valley, close to the border of the Kaelgrad Empire. The houses were made of stone and wood, with thatched roofs that looked golden in the morning sun. Children played in the cobbled streets, their laughter echoing off the hills. Farmers worked in the fields nearby, tending to their sheep and growing their crops. The people of Trenvar were simple folk. They lived peaceful lives, day after day, year after year. They did not know of politics or kings. They knew only the seasons, the earth, and each other. Their world was small, but it was safe. They felt protected, far from any trouble. The village was known for its beautiful white flowers, which grew wild on the surrounding slopes. Every spring, the valley would be covered in a carpet of white blossoms, a truly breathtaking sight. Visitors would sometimes come just to see them. The villagers would welcome them with warm bread and fresh milk, proud of their little corner of the world. They had a saying in Trenvar: "So long as the white flowers bloom, peace will have a home here." It was a simple belief, but it gave them comfort. They asked for very little from life. And in return, life had always been kind to them. It was a place where you could hear the birds sing and the river flow, a gentle rhythm to their days. But one night, everything changed forever. The moon was hidden behind thick, dark clouds, and a strange silence fell over the valley. It was not the usual quiet of the night. It was a heavy, watchful silence. The animals in the fields were restless, sensing something that the sleeping villagers could not. No one saw the shadows that moved through the darkness. No one heard the whispers that were carried on the wind. The people of Trenvar were tucked up in their beds, dreaming of another peaceful sunrise. They had no idea that they would never see one again. They were entirely unaware of the terrible fate that was about to befall them. When morning came, there was no Trenvar. The village was gone. Where houses once stood, there were only smoking ruins and blackened craters. The cobbled streets were shattered, the fields were scorched, and the beautiful white flowers were turned to ash. There was no laughter, no life, only a dreadful, heartbreaking silence. The sun rose on a scene of utter devastation, a scar upon the land that would never heal. The village of Trenvar, once a symbol of peace, had been wiped from the face of the earth in a single terrible night. It was a tragedy that would soon send shockwaves across the entire continent, changing the world for everyone. News of the destruction traveled fast. It reached the capital of the Kaelgrad Empire, where the ruler, Emperor Rauth Kaelin, sat upon his iron throne. He was a man with a cold heart and ambitious eyes. He did not weep for the people of Trenvar. Instead, he saw an opportunity. He stood before his court and his people, his face a mask of fury. He held up a scorched banner, supposedly found in the ruins. He pointed a finger across the border, towards the neighboring land of Virelia. "This was their doing!" he roared, his voice like thunder. "The cowards of Virelia crept in like thieves in the night and destroyed our village." His words were filled with a terrible, calculated anger. The emperor's accusation was a lie, a cruel and clever lie. Virelia had nothing to do with the attack. They were a peaceful nation, just like the villagers of Trenvar. For many years, the two nations had lived side by side, bound by a promise called the Crimson Pact. This was a special treaty, a solemn vow that they would never go to war with one another. It had kept the peace for a generation, but Emperor Kaelin no longer wanted peace. He wanted power, and he wanted land. He declared that Virelia's unprovoked attack had shattered their sacred agreement. "The Crimson Pact is broken," he proclaimed to the cheering crowds. "Virelia has chosen war, and war they shall have." The people of Kaelgrad believed their emperor. They were filled with sadness for Trenvar and anger towards Virelia. They did not question his words. They saw the emperor as their strong protector, and they trusted him to do what was right. Stories of Virelian treachery spread like wildfire through the empire. The emperor's generals began to gather their armies, polishing their swords and preparing their war machines. A dark mood settled over the land, a feeling of grim determination. The peace that had lasted for so long was now just a distant memory, replaced by the drums of war that beat louder and louder with each passing hour. Emperor Kaelin had planned this all along. The destruction of Trenvar was not an attack by Virelia. It was a monstrous act committed by his own secret soldiers. He had sacrificed one of his own villages to create a reason for war. It was a dark and twisted scheme, born from his own greed. He knew that Virelia was not ready for a fight. He knew they would be caught by surprise. He smiled a cold, thin smile as he looked at the maps of his generals. He had his excuse, his casus belli. The stage was set for his grand invasion, and he was certain of a swift and easy victory. The fate of thousands rested on his terrible lie. With the Crimson Pact declared broken, Emperor Kaelin wasted no time. He gave the order to begin his invasion, a massive military campaign he called Operation Iron Dawn. Before the sun had even risen the next day, the armies of Kaelgrad marched. Thousands of soldiers clad in dark iron armor crossed the border into Virelia. They moved like a great unstoppable river of steel. War horns blared, their mournful sound carrying across the fields and forests. The ground trembled under the weight of their marching feet and the rumble of their siege engines. The dawn was not golden and hopeful. It was grey and filled with the promise of conflict and sorrow. The invasion was a complete shock to the people of Virelia. They woke not to the sound of birdsong, but to the terrifying sounds of war. They were a nation that valued peace and art, not battle. Their army was small, and their border forts were not prepared for such a huge and sudden assault. Panic spread through the towns and villages as the Kaelgrad forces advanced. Families fled their homes, taking only what they could carry, their faces filled with fear and confusion. They could not understand why this was happening. They had done nothing to provoke their neighbors. The peace they had known their whole lives had been shattered in an instant. Kaelgrad's soldiers were ruthless and efficient. They had been training for this moment for years. They quickly overwhelmed the unprepared Virelian border guards, pushing deeper and deeper into the country. Their goal was to strike fast and hard, to break the spirit of Virelia before it had a chance to fight back. Emperor Kaelin had told his generals to show no mercy. He wanted a swift conquest, a victory that would be spoken of for centuries. The iron fist of the Kaelgrad Empire was closing around Virelia, and it seemed as if nothing could stop it. The initial hours of Operation Iron Dawn were a disaster for the defenders. But the spirit of the Virelian people, though shaken, was not broken. As news of the invasion spread, the initial shock began to turn into a fierce determination. They might not have been a nation of warriors, but they were a nation of proud and brave people. They would not simply stand by and watch their homes be taken from them. They loved their country, and they would fight for it. From the farms to the cities, people began to rally together. The surprise attack was meant to crush them, but instead, it lit a fire in their hearts. A fire of defiance that would soon grow into a blazing flame of resistance. In the capital of Virelia, the government was in chaos. The suddenness of the invasion had caught them completely off guard. Ministers and officials argued, unsure of what to do. The country needed a leader, someone who could unite them and guide them through this dark time. Out of this confusion, a decision was made. They would form a new group to lead the defense of their nation. They called it the Unified Defense Council. It brought together the wisest minds from the government, the military, and the people, all working together for one purpose: to save Virelia from the invaders. The council's first and most important decision was to choose a commander for their army. They needed someone strong, experienced, and respected. There was only one name on everyone's lips: General Elira Vorn. She was a veteran soldier, a woman who had served her country her entire life. She was older now, with hair as white as snow, but her eyes were still sharp, and her mind was as keen as a blade. She had thought her fighting days were over, that she would live out her life in peaceful retirement in the countryside. But when her country called, she did not hesitate for a moment. She answered the call to duty. General Vorn arrived at the council chambers, her back straight and her presence commanding. A hush fell over the room. She listened quietly as they explained the desperate situation. The Kaelgradi army was advancing, and Virelia's forces were scattered and disorganized. Many thought the situation was hopeless, but when General Vorn spoke, her voice was calm and steady. "Hope is not lost," she said simply. "We have the love of our land in our hearts. That is a weapon Kaelgrad does not possess. We will fight, we will endure, and we will not let our home fall." Her words were like a balm to their frayed nerves, giving them strength. With General Vorn in command, A new sense of purpose filled the air. She worked tirelessly, day and night, organizing the defense. She sent out riders with orders, rallied scattered troops, and planned her strategy. She spoke to the soldiers, not as a distant general, but as a fellow patriot, reminding them of what they were fighting for, their families, their homes, their freedom. The people of Virelia looked to her as a symbol of their courage. She was their shield, their hope in the darkness. The war had only just begun, and the road ahead would be long and hard. But with General Vaughan leading them, they were ready to face the Iron Dawn together.